Hi again, folks. Mark Merrill with Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media. The leftists plan an overthrow of America. Start things off, ladies and gentlemen. We have a report from, as you see here, our friend from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton, on the Supreme Court, which will be ruling in a few weeks about a radical takeover or overthrow of our republic and our Constitution through the voting system. The Electoral College, they want to abolish it. They have wanted to for a long time. So here is now a segment from Tom Fitton's organization, Judicial Watch, and Tom himself with an update on the process of how this can be stopped. And we can get back to normal voting procedures in the United States and the state of Maine.
Judicial Watch is challenging an Illinois law that allows the counting of mail-in ballots that arrive up to 14 days after Election Day. That's 2 weeks beyond the date set by federal law. Even ballots that arrive without a postmark can be counted. Federal law says the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every even-numbered year is Election Day for federal elections. Extending the counting of ballots doesn't just run counter to federal law. It invites voter fraud and undermines voter confidence. Judicial Watch argues that Illinois' law violates federal law and threatens election integrity. In addition, we argue candidates running for office should be able to challenge these sorts of laws in court. Until recently, it was self-evident that candidates could sue to challenge election regulations. However, two lower courts ruled that our clients, candidates for federal office, lack the basis to challenge Illinois' practice of counting ballots received after Election Day. Standing is the legal term for this legal right to pursue a lawsuit in court. Judicial Watch lawyers responded that candidates have an obvious interest in the lawfulness and fairness of the rules that govern the elections into which they pour their time and resources. They also have an obvious interest in ensuring that the final vote tally accurately reflects the legally valid votes cast. If a candidate can't challenge the illicit counting of ballots contrary to federal law, who can? This is the exact issue now before the Supreme Court. No other legal organization has matched Judicial Watch's record in ensuring free and fair elections. The outcome of this Supreme Court case could impact how elections are run for years to come. And you can be sure Judicial Watch will continue to fight for election integrity, because no one is above the law.
Judicial Watch's Supreme Court case is accelerating. We filed a key brief the last few weeks. The opening brief in Judicial Watch's lawsuit that's before the Supreme Court, where we're representing a member of Congress, Congressman Boss, the two presidential electors, trying to vindicate their right to challenge a dubious, or that's a charitable way of putting it, unlawful election rule that allows the counting of ballots that are for up to 14 days after election. And we did a quick video explaining the issue here. We will go to clip 15 to help you understand it.
Judicial Watch is taking its election integrity fight to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just agreed to hear Judicial Watch's appeal for a case filed on behalf of Congressman Mike Bost and two presidential electors, challenging an Illinois law extending Election Day for 14 days beyond the date established by federal law. The lower courts had previously denied that Congressman Bost and the electors had standing to challenge Illinois' practice of counting ballots received for up to 2 weeks after Election Day. In the lawsuit, Judicial Watch argues, despite Congress's clear statement regarding a single national election day, Illinois has expanded Election Day by extending by 14 days the date for receipt and counting of vote-by-mail ballots. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton had this to say about the upcoming Supreme Court action. The Supreme Court's decision to hear this case is a critical opportunity to uphold federal law, protect voter rights, and ensure election integrity. Illinois' 14-day extension of Election Day thwarts federal law, violates the civil rights of voters, and invites fraud. Last year, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with Judicial Watch.
There's that segment, folks, from Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton and his organization, preparing that statement earlier in a day or two ago. But Mr. Fitton also reveals, ladies and gentlemen, and we want to point that out right now because the date that the Supreme Court will be hearing that case or ruling is going to be somewhere in the area on or in or near, or on exact date for that matter, of October 8th. So it's a few more weeks away, folks. That's after the justices return to their regular session. So, in the meantime, certainly do want to keep you abreast of what's going on, which can affect all states. Voter fraud's been going on since, we believe, here at Firm, ladies and gentlemen, long before the Obama administration, or just as he was finishing his first term. Let's put it that way. Pretty sad state of affairs. Not only does Mr. Trump, in his second term as president, have to fight illegals swamping into our country, no thanks to Joe Biden, and Hillary Clinton probably, and George Soros. It's the inner enemy of the deflectocrats, especially the radical ones that we call the left wingnut radicals, who decide that they want to trash the Constitution because it's outdated and gets help from the mainstream media, what's left of it, and social media minionites, morons, who have no job and strip the United States economy of welfare rolls that should go to the low-income people of this country who've worked all their lives to at least get welfare and food stamps and needs to feed a young family if they're just starting out. But oh no! It's all about politics and hate for one person. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, we move on next to a new report from candidate Bobby Charles. I'm sure you're probably familiar with his name by now, and we have his website picture up there, along with, unfortunately, Janet Mills. And the reason for that is because that Mr. Charles calls out not only Governor Mills, but the entire state Democratic Party on a recent Facebook post. And we have that, ladies and gentlemen, right here. Basically, titled, just came out a few hours ago, folks, within the last 24 to 48 hours. Who's really fighting for Maine families? So as a copy of it, we'll show it to you folks, but we will also read it for you as well. It's a little bit far away from the camera. I do apologize for that. But basically, at the top, you can probably see a picture of Mr. Charles and then Mills down below, but the title is right near the top in white. Who's really fighting for Maine families? Well, here's the breakdown that Bobby Charles submits. Janet Mills, representing the Democrats, will go star by star, or bullet point by bullet point, if you will. Mills in blue and Mr. Charles is in red. Start with Ms. Mills. Who's really fighting for Maine families? Well, her first action, says let criminals and drugs flood our communities. Mr. Charles says, on the other side, right here, a proven crime fighter who will clean up the streets. Janet Mills, failed policies that empower criminals and fuel addiction. Mr. Charles, his second point, decades of experience fighting crime and stopping drugs. Ms. Mills' final point, endangering our families with weak crime and drug policies. And Mr. Charles, his last point, protecting Maine families, taking drugs off our streets. And now, ladies and gentlemen, just a brief excerpt of an interview that took place a few weeks ago by Mr. Charles with WVOM Radio, George Hale, Rick Tyler show. Pretty well sums it up right here.
So the bottom line is speak truth to power. And what power is going to do in this state, because it's a one-party state, they control all the constitutional officers, they control the House, the Senate, and the governorship. This governor, if we aren't clued into it yet, doesn't give a damn about the average Mainer. She has her agenda. She has 10 little hills she wants to die on. One of them is sanctuary state, and one of them is boys and girls sports. These Democrats are so far away from the average Mainer that I'm going to tell you, independents, that's why you just had another independent join the race saying the state's a failed state. You have independents and traditional Democrats who are contributing to me and who are saying, Bobby, go. Speak truth. No one has dared to speak truth. Everybody thinks they're going to be fired or shut down. I run my own company. You're going to shut it down? I have a good relationship with myself. I'm not going to fire myself, okay? They are trying to intimidate average Mainers, George. And you know what? I grew up in this state. I've had it. They hijacked the state. I want the state back. And most of Maine wants Norman Rockwell's Maine back. A state that is honest and decent and accountable and truthful and has integrity in their House members and in their Senate members and loves Maine and loves America.
Well, I think that pretty much says it all, folks, when it comes to Mr. Charles and what he had to say there. You, the Maine voter, are pretty much going to deal with it, ladies and gentlemen. We all are. Next year. That's something we all have to consider very, very seriously. You know, folks, one thing that's not up there, as far as Mills, who, by the way, has blood on her hands, and I have firsthand accountability to throw in her face, April 20th, 2021. Actually, it was 2020. I beg your pardon. Patriots Day. Right in the middle of the beginning of COVID, the so-called pandemic. Garbage. It was manipulation political-wise because Donald Trump was still president at that time in his first term. She shut off schools, fired nurses and doctors who wouldn't take the COVID vaccine, pushed most of our school districts into huts, mobile homes that are usually used for overflow, teachers out of work, having to work from home in some cases, students having to study from home, forced to. And you know who was in the audience on that day between State Street and the Blaine Mansion, folks? Yours truly. We started our organization back in 2018. This was April of 2020. It was a nice day. About the only thing that was good about it. Former Governor Paul LePage was in the audience. He heard the concerns and the terrible unconscionable, no compassion, no feelings, no understanding where these people were coming from, as they all stood out there listening to speakers come up to the podium, makeshift podium right near the State House with loudspeakers right in the middle of State Street, near the corner of State Street and Capitol Street across from the Blaine Mansion. Janet could hear it if she was there, if she gave a damn. Paul LePage was there. He gave a brief speech. But one of the main speakers, folks, was Laurel Libby. A newly elected Laurel Libby, representing Auburn and Minot in the House GOP. You may recall, got censured for being outspoken against transgender boys in women's sports. The rest speaks for itself, folks. It's pretty lousy. Just a reminder from Firm. Now, a final piece of information has come to our attention, ladies and gentlemen, as well. As if one Democrat's bad enough, here's the other one. This just posted less than 24 hours ago to the Maine Secretary of State's office online and on social media, Facebook particularly. Here's the post titled Maine Department of Secretary of State's post from her office, Shenna Bellows, as you see before you. Secretary Bellows today issued a formal letter of response to the Department of Justice, the federal Department of Justice, second demand for every Maine citizen's voter information, including sensitive and protected personally identifying information, including driver's license numbers, partial Social Security numbers, full dates of birth, and other information for all registered Maine voters, as well as new demand for all voter registration applications submitted from December 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2025. The bottom of the statement, Secretary of State denies the Federal Justice Department demand for personally identifying information, or PII, of more than 1 million voters. Gee, you think there might be some illegals in there, ladies and gentlemen? Hard to say. Details to come, I'm sure, further. You can also check her out, as you can Janet Mills, online. But as always for us, folks, Mark Merrill here for Firm, Fairness in Reporting Media. We give you podcasts and programs 5 times a week. They are posted on Twitter or X.com, YouTube. And 24 hours a day, we want to hear from you, folks. Fairness in Reporting Media at gmail.com. Fairness in Reporting Media at gmail.com. That's what we are. Fairness in Reporting Media. Truth, facts, reality, and common sense. Stay tuned, folks. Pray for our country and our state. As always, stay safe and peace to all.